Welcome. So my name is Matthew Rothfuss. I'm the head of the reference department here at the Bethlehem Area Public Library. Tonight's program, Crooked Row Farm, an organic journey in the Lehigh Valley. We're just so grateful to Liz from Crooked Row Farm for joining us tonight. And especially thankful to Carol Burns, who helped coordinate and put this program together. I think, Carol, this is our fourth program together in just in the last couple of months. For any friends and family that aren't able to make it tonight, we will be recording the program and putting it up on YouTube in about a week or so. So look for that. But I will go ahead and hand it over to Carol. Thank you so much, Carol, again.
Great, thanks, Matt. I just wanted to add my welcome to everyone who's here. This is a collaborative endeavor between the Bethlehem Area Public Library and the Bethlehem Area Food Co-op. We'll talk a little bit more about the food co-op at the end, but also to the Friends of the Library at the Bethlehem Library. They support all the funding, or they support with their funding all the programs that the library is able to present to the community. So we're grateful to that group too. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to pass it over to a very good friend of the Bethlehem Food Co-op, and that's farmer Liz Wagner from Crooked Row Farm in Schnecksville. And welcome, Liz.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Co-op. This has been such a fun couple of months, and I'm very excited to be here. All right, I guess we'll get started. Hi, I'm Liz Wagner. I'm the owner and operator of Crooked Row Farm, which was established in Lehigh County in 2013. We have 10 acres of certified organic vegetables in Nutropoli, which is a small area on the western edge of Lehigh Valley. And we have a farm stand and 3 acres with 2 high tunnels, some chickens, and the retail stand in Orfield, Pennsylvania, which is Schnecksville area. So I've been farming now here since 2013. So I guess we'll do the little background story first. I grew up in this area. My parents have had a small business in Orfield since the 80s. I went away to college. I went to school for journalism. I was not on my radar in my teens or early 20s that this was going to be my life path. But as I was finishing college, my family, both of my parents grew up on different sorts of homesteads. My mom grew up in Center Valley in just kind of a regular small farmette where it started as like a military bus that they parked on this property and built a homestead around it. And my dad grew up in Orfield on a Syrian farmstead that was all kinds of animals, all of his grandparents and parents and siblings. So they were trying to move back into the idea of a family farm. And like I said, I was living in Philly. I had no real understanding of what that meant until we started looking at places where they might move. And we were out in Nutropoli and the land was beautiful. And it was at the same point in my life where I was becoming very interested in what I was eating. I was 22, I was living in the city, and I just started cooking for myself as like a young adult. And I became really interested in vegetables, fresh vegetables. And Philadelphia has amazing farmers markets, amazing opportunities for things like this. But because my parents were going to buy some farmland, I took an extra step with them. We talked a lot about it. I was working in the city at a legal nonprofit, doing a lot of front of house stuff. And I said, hey, what if I took a farm apprenticeship and left and kind of went back on your health insurance for a year and moved out into the country and worked on a farm? Because there are a lot of opportunities to do those sorts of things. Wolfing is one I'm sure some of you have heard of. I found the farm that I lived and worked on in 2012 through a program called NESOG, which is a farmer apprenticeship program in New England. So in 2012, I ended up in the Hudson Valley for a whole year, living on this beautiful 14-acre organic farm. It was dreamy and very challenging, and I hadn't really ever lived that far away from home. We were doing a farmer's market in Manhattan, which was in Union Square. It was the busiest, craziest, wildest thing I have ever experienced. We would drive in at 4 a.m. with this box truck full of vegetables that we had just harvested the day before. We would set up this giant stand. We would sell vegetables all day, and then we'd take it all apart and move somewhere else. It was such a wild experience. And I'm not sure I would have the energy to do that now, but 11 years ago, I definitely, it was a cool thing to be able to do. And I lived and worked on that farm from April of 2012 until the very end of December. So we did a whole season. I learned how to grow things in a greenhouse. That particular farm did several acres of garlic that we pulled by hand for weeks and then planted in the fall again by hand for weeks. It was just totally eye-opening to a whole different lifestyle and a whole different career path that I didn't really know was available to me. I mean, I didn't have a farming background. I went to school with some friends who were from farming families, and that's kind of what they knew what they were going to be doing. This sort of came in a funny direction, but I moved home. My parents hadn't moved to this farm yet, so I built a little greenhouse in the backyard of their house in our cul-de-sac, and I was starting seeds in there in 2013. They were very supportive. When I look back on like the antics I was doing, I don't know how. They were very patient with me as I tried to figure this out. But I learned a lot about all the different parts of farming. And now 10 years in, I feel like I'm still learning so much. 2013 was a wild year. We didn't even really have water on the property when I started. So we were hauling, I would fill up a big water tank, drive it to Nutropoli, put it on like the very vital plants. And I had a pickup truck, and I was driving to Philly twice a week for farmers markets. It was really surreal. It was very fast paced. And then in the winter, I was working on a dairy farm, and I was working in a health food store. So I was sort of learning about co-ops a little bit at that point, just from, I mean, I've been buying seeds from seed co-ops for several years. And I started doing that in 2013 because the guy I worked for had been doing that. And the dairy was selling to a milk co-op, and the health food store had a vibe that I saw in a lot of co-ops. So fast forward to 2015, when I first actually heard of the Bethlehem Food Co-op, it was really cool to join and know that like something really fun was being built in the midst of all this. So I digress a little bit there, but so I kept farming. I did 2 farmers markets, and I started a CSA. And I think at one point I was doing a Tuesday market in Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia. I was doing a Saturday market in East Falls in Philadelphia, and we had maybe 75 members. And that's a pretty small CSA program. There are farms like Taproot Farm and Red Earth Farm who have like 600 members. So what I was doing was pretty small, but it was also really hinging upon the fact that like my family was so involved at this point. They have an auto body background, so I was very surprised at how engaged they were. My mom was like my co-pilot. She was watering the greenhouse. She was seeding with me. None of them really do some of the like field labor anymore, but those first few years, you know, was my mom, my grandmother, her sister. It was a whole family affair. And in the last few years, they've kind of become more and more interested in agriculture in their own right. My parents started to keep bison, which terrified me at first. But it's been incredible to watch my parents. They go to these bison conferences to learn how they're supposed to be putting pasture in for them and different skill sets they need to work with such big animals, which aren't domesticated. And so they're not nearly as docile as a cow. My dad started making hay and is working with some men around here who do organic hay and is learning a lot about that process. It's been really amazing. And my grandmother, who you see a very tiny little old lady in any of these pictures. It's my 89-year-old grandmother who will still come hang out at the stand and help me bag vegetables. I mean, the thing about farming is it doesn't work without community. And I learned that right away. So that's been kind of a crazy experience, meeting all these different humans and learning all these things about everyone's different skill sets when it comes to this sort of work. So where are we in the timeline here? So 2017 was when we moved, okay. We moved to Orfield. I'm still farming in Nutropoli. We're doing a lot of big acre crops there. I keep my garlic there. I keep potatoes there. I've been building a lot of perennial beds there for years and years and years. But Orfield came with this beautiful farm stand that had been a produce stand since, I think, before I was born, really. I remember going there with my mom and my sister as a little kid and getting watermelons, getting cantaloupes, things like that. And because those owners knew my parents because their auto body shop is right down the street and they knew that I was farming, they sold us this property because they thought I could really, make a go of it, which was, scary again. So in 2017, I sort of pulled back from the farmers markets in Philly and I scaled down my CSA and tried to figure out how to open a retail store, which is different again. You're harvesting a lot more frequently because you're open all the time. I had to learn a lot about refrigeration and cold storage and things that when you're doing a once a week market, it's sort of on the customer at that point. You take everything there as freshly as you can, as soon as you picked it, you take it to this market, and then it's in the hands of your patron and they go home and they take care of it. This was different again. And it also taught me a lot about aggregating. A little further down in the slideshow, there are some photos of some of the folks we work with, but I started realizing, okay, I can't just sell vegetables at this farm stand. I need to meet some other people. So I started meeting meat vendors, bread vendors, fruit vendors, all these different people who are doing amazing things in Lehigh Valley. And it was really fun to interact with them, to see the different ways that they're growing food. And that's something I get to do constantly. I always get to meet new farmers. I always get to talk to new people who are as excited about food as I was 10 years ago. And it's just really inspiring. And they're all here. I mean, I do get a little bit of stuff out of Lancaster, some pantry items, ghee, like tahini that's made in Philadelphia. But most of the fresh things that I get are coming from, Hamburg might be as far away, or Bangor. It's everything is so close and it's amazing and it's fresh and everyone is so excited about the work that they do. And it's nice to be able to be like a little mini hub in that respect, because it's always fun when the vendors run into each other. So that, like I said, started in 2017, and I've just kind of been incrementally growing out that space. Until 2020, when everything went crazy. I had anticipated in 2019 that I wanted to have a small scale up. I wanted to hire a field manager because I was still at this point, I had a couple of part-time people helping me in the stand. I had a part-time person helping me once or twice a week in the field, but I was kind of flying solo. And as much as I like that to a certain degree, because it's really fun to have a job where you can put on a headset and listen to audiobooks almost all day and do work. I love the great thing about being an English major and being a farmer is that I just get to listen to books like all day. It's such a surprise. I didn't know that was going to be like a boon in my life, but I'm really very grateful for it. But I definitely needed help. Everything was growing really quickly. So in 2019, I hired a field manager, this fellow Brandon, who is a dear friend of mine who had his own farm for a few years. He knew how to build high tunnels, which high tunnels are sort of like a greenhouse structure, but you plant right in the ground. And that's, if you've gotten any of the vegetable boxes or anything like that, that is where the greens are grown right now. And in the summer, we do tomatoes in there. We do some really early cucumbers, celery, things like that. But it's a difficult structure to build. He knew how to do those things. So he came on board. We like retrofitted a really nice washroom to pass all the inspections we'd need. And because I have a retail food license, I have like a limited kitchen setup where we can do certain foods right on site because that washroom is so like professionally built. So to that end, I'll get there, I guess. I don't want to stay here. So we're doing the scale up. 2020 happened and the world shut down. And all of a sudden I went from having like this small little farm stand to hundreds of people were coming in every day out of nowhere, like overnight, because they didn't want to go into a grocery store or everyone was doing a lot of the frantic buying. And so the Weiss up the street from where I was didn't have potatoes for like a week. And that was not something we had ever run out of because I sort of knew smaller vendors who can't get into bigger spaces like that because of legal contracts or because of certain rules within a chain grocery store. There's all these like itty bitty things that really impede your ability to get food into a retail space in certain settings at certain scales. And I wasn't really, I didn't have those sets of rules in the same way. So our business like quadrupled in the span of a week. And it was it was scary. And like, everyone was very scared. People were sometimes very angry when they came in. That was the first time I had ever experienced that. Because usually farmers markets and spaces like that are it's a very friendly space. Everyone's very excited to like just be out getting food. So I had to kind of teach myself, everyone's just scared. It's not personal. But to that end, all of a sudden I needed like a crew because I was in the stand from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. every night. We were getting food in from everyone available. And it was just a constant flow. In the span of a weekend, I had set up this like online ordering platform for people who wanted curbside, or we set up a delivery route. We were doing like 40 deliveries a day from Allentown through Easton. And because the world had shut down, there were people around. I had friends who had been stuck here because of the lockdown and couldn't get back to where they were living. I had friends who were baristas who couldn't get work right now. And so we made this sort of ragtag farm crew, and a bunch of them are still here now. They decided they liked it and they stayed. But it was a wild time. We ended up building a second high tunnel. We ended up building a huge outside walk-in cooler, which we received some grant money from the state because we're actually sharing it with the local food pantry down the street. So right now they have a bunch of stuff in it for one of their drives next week. It was pretty cool. And let's see, what else did we do? I mean, the amount of food we grew that year was maybe 3 or 4 times the amount of food I had ever grown by myself. It was wild. And we were growing watermelons, things I hadn't really dabbled in. It was cool. It was like everyone, I think, was pretty nervous that year and having a whole emotional thing, but it was really nice to have a setting where you could work outside and just kind of be with plants. It was an okay thing. And then I did not put any of these pictures in the slideshow. They were like maybe a little too gruesome. But in July of 2020, July 1st, 2020, I had a farm accident. And statistically, they say ag is one of the most like dangerous jobs for kind of serious injury. And I had known that, and I had worked on a dairy farm, and I had never had that issue. But I knew a lot of people who have been hurt doing farm things. So, you know, when you're in the middle of a project, you're not really thinking about something like that. But July 1st, 2020, we were taking down a high tunnel. We were going to disassemble and then build on my property in the fall. And we dropped part of it on one of my hands. There's really no way for you to like see this on Zoom, but this finger, like not on my hand that day. And it was a really crazy thing to have to like, I don't know, it happened. We immediately got to the ER and they put it back on because science is amazing, but I wasn't able to work for the first time, you know, in almost a decade at that point, in the busiest part of our farm season. I had this crazy cast. I had to have 2 surgeries because I had like broken every bone and like severed every tendon in that hand. And it was really scary to take my hands off the wheel like that for so long. I was out of it. I mean, physically, I was out of it for maybe like a month and a half, but I don't know, mentally, that whole thing, I think it took me until like January of this year to really get like back in the groove of like farm work again. My hand just didn't work right. And you don't realize how important these are until you can't use them. And for what I do, I mean, I can stand in the stand and I can do that stuff, but everything I do is a lot of piecework. So it was really scary. And it taught me a lot about the fact that a lot of my peers, because farming is usually like a solo enterprise and things like that, I was one of the only people I know in my age demographic who farms, who had health insurance. And I, you know, it's a scary thing to be self-employed, and it's a scary thing to know that there are other people doing the kind of work that I do who aren't thinking about that stuff. I know that's really neither here nor there in the vegetable saga, but it's made me realize I need to take better care of myself. So the farm crew were getting like really solid gloves and, you know, good work boots, all these things that I sort of took for granted as a younger person. I want to make sure my body's going to be able to do this in another 10 years in one piece. So these are sort of what I'm aiming toward now. So we covered COVID. Where are we here? Scale up. My crew, there are so many pictures of the crew in here because over the last couple of years, I have worked with some of the most amazing, funny, motivated people. Amanda came up from Texas to work for some other farmers like years ago, and she's just kind of been up here now. My teenage cousin needed a summer job and like became one of the best members of our crew last year we had ever had. Brandon was just such a gem. He's like a bug nerd. So he knows every bug and he knows how to fix every little problem. Lisa is just so happy to be working outside. And Jesse was the one who really took all of the herb projects that I had kind of dabbled in as a side gig over the last 7 years. And she created this entire herbals lines of products that we sell. We sell these beautiful skin oils, and she made these recipes for loose leaf herb teas. And it's just been such a dream to be able to know that, okay, I'm going to get up and go to work with these people they're amazing. They are earnest and hardworking because you really have to be. I think there's maybe an idea that farming is very Instagram savvy, and it's a lot of like gleefully taking pictures of vegetables in the field. And there is a little bit of that, but it's like, it's hard work. It's grueling, sweaty, painful work sometimes. And you get wet in the rain, you get cold in the winter, you get too hot in the summer, and you have to keep going because, you know, the plants need you, the vegetables need to be picked. And, you know, you can't really come back to that stuff in a couple days when you feel like it. It has to get done in that moment. Farming has taught me a lot about life being, learning to adapt, but also just like, sometimes you just gotta push through other things in your life because the plants aren't going to stop even if you want to. It's been very good for me. I don't know if it's good for everyone's brain, but it's been pretty cool. So let's see here. What else do I have in these notes?
Liz, I'm kind of watching the clock and just
yeah, how we doing?
Yeah, if you want to start going through some of the photos while you're talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I mean, Matt, if you want to start scrolling around, let's see here. Yeah, if you just want to scroll every couple of seconds, that'd be perfect. Is that okay? Yeah, that's great. I mean, learning how to do all of this different work again and again has just been so satisfying. This is a view I get to look at, you know, most days when the sun is up. It's just incredible. And the food is such an important part of, I don't know why I started, but also meeting more people, meeting people who joined the food co-op and meeting people who have shown some vested interest in taking control of their health or wanting to know where their food comes from or wanting to be a part of a local like fiscal economy. All of those things play into what you're eating. So you can come at it from any angle. I mean, I have beautiful vegan customers. I have really wild folks who just want to know they're supporting like a local business. And some of it is perennial based. This is a witch hazel that we planted because for me, a lot of this is about learning about the plants that used to be here, that maybe should be here. Nutropoli has a lot of woods lines, so we've been putting in a lot of these sorts of plants. We've been trying to pay attention to this sort of perennial culture and regeneration of certain crops. We have a ramp patch that I did not think you could grow ramps. It was really surprising. Somebody gave me some with the roots out and I'm like, oh no, what do I do with these? So we planted them in our woods and they're up and we're gonna have ramps. It's wild. And of course, after spending a year working on a farm, I definitely had to, you know, plant a bunch of garlic. So every year we have this massive garlic harvest. Last year was the first time it was my crew and not my family. Although I think we might go back to my family this year because I think we're going to have a smaller crew. But we will spend a whole day. And this used to be like all of my cousins, a bunch of my aunts and uncles. We would pull the garlic. You have to hang it up in a barn so it can cure. So it's just this very kind of dirty, gritty process. And it takes all day. And at the end, you know, we eat a bunch of food together. And it's like, it's a really amazing thing. Let's see. Where are we now? So yeah, I guess I'll talk about some of these pictures that we go through. This is a crimson clover. It's a deep red clover. It's a nitrogen fixer. So it puts a lot of soil nutrition and nitrogen back into the ground so a vegetable can take it up later. This is something I'm constantly learning about. Taking down crops and putting in a cover crop. It helps with soil erosion. It helps with the health of future plants. It just helps with the microbiology of a soil. And it's been such a dream. I mean, just imagine having a whole field of that. It's just totally gorgeous. And to that end, we've also been learning a lot about vegetables the customers like. So these are called little gems, which I was very skeptical of this. People started coming in and asking me for little gem lettuces. I'm like, I don't know what this is. It's a small mini lettuce head that grows amazingly in winter, like the dead of winter. We had these all through January. It's taking a while to get them to grow back now, but it's been really fun to have that kind of dialogue with the people who come in, and I really appreciate that we can talk about food in that way, because I learn a lot. I mean, I just feel like I get to learn at this job every year, and that's been such a treat. I'm very excited to learn more. Oh, I'm looking. Okay, I'm going to look at this. Susan, let's see. Yes. So there's been a lot of, this is a pretty cool thing. I'm just looking at something Susan wrote in the dialogue. There's actually in Pennsylvania, I mean, I don't know if all states are like this, but Pennsylvania has been really supportive of agriculture in different ways, especially over the last few years. Like I said earlier, I was able to build an entire walk-in cooler and get like a generator for the retail stand because I grow and sell Pennsylvania produce. And something they're working on a whole segment of women in agriculture. A couple winters ago, or a couple falls ago, I guess, Russell Redding came out. He's the Pennsylvania Secretary of Ag, and did a big segment with me and a couple other women just right around here who farm. And it was a really cool opportunity to talk to him about some of the things that we see as challenging. Just sort of a neat opportunity to speak to somebody who he worked on a farm. So he has a lot of understanding of some of the challenges with this. And, you know, appreciates that sometimes it is a little bit harder for women in agriculture. I feel this is my 10th year, and I feel like this is the first year I've gone into some of the mechanic shops and I can talk to them without feeling, I don't know, a little vulnerable, I guess, maybe is the word. Or I used to have people ask me where my husband was, which is funny because this is actually my boyfriend on the tractor. This was me teaching him how to use the tractor we were planting potatoes. Gosh, that must have been 2020, I guess. But he has an off-farm job. He farms in as much as when I need help, he will come help me. So this is one of our epic garlic harvests. This must have been 2016, I guess. If my farmer friends saw how weedy this field was that year, they would have laughed at me. But this is like, these are my cousins, my aunt. This is my little grandma. She's gonna be 89 next week. And she used to come weed. She doesn't do that now. And she used to come hang out before COVID. I think she's gonna come back now that things are a little more calm. But she will clean garlic. She will bag beans. She will harass my customers. But she grew up on a farmstead, so she's learned a lot, and she's got endless knowledge about the area. You know, she's been in Orfield since the 30s. This is a picture from our plant sale last year. We do a plant sale every year. If you know anyone who's looking for plant starts, or in the background, organic potting soil, I know sometimes that's a little harder to find. We get bales of it brought in from Vermont because in 2017, I got my organic certification. It was a little bit grueling. Okay, here you are. You want the bison pictures. The organic certification was a little challenging to do the first time. The renewal process, they build it to be a little easier, but it's a lot of paperwork and it's a lot of record keeping. And in my experience, some of my peer farmers aren't necessarily as good at that stuff. And so I do understand why not everyone wants to be certified. It's also, it's pretty expensive every year. There's a small cost share through the government, but it can be cost prohibitive, especially if you're a young and beginning farmer. So I will carry stuff from people who are not certified, but I usually talk to them and I've seen their operations and I trust them. Yeah, this was last summer. We had some babies. The bison have just been such a treat to have around. I did not anticipate that in my life at all, especially after working on a dairy farm. I was sort of over big animals, and then my parents were like, we're going to get bison. And right now, they're just working on sort of growing a herd. We have 7, and they're learning how to do the whole pasture thing. They have to build more fence because they didn't realize how much room a bison needs. So they're learning as they go. But ours are sort of uncharacteristically sweet. Like the young ones will come up to my parents at the fence line and like beg for apples, and you can scratch their heads. That's not something I would recommend you ever doing if you see a bison. I am terrified every time they do it. For me, I like my animals small. I like chickens. I didn't really know I was going to end up with chickens either, but our eggs are phenomenal, and I don't cull my hens. Some people will do that. Like after a year or two, a laying hen doesn't produce, and so people will kind of get rid of them and get new chickens. But I don't really feel like that's fair. It's definitely not, my approach is not cost effective, but I love having them all here. And you know, it's funny because there are like older hens who will definitely like boss around the younger ones. But it's a really funny dynamic. And there'll be broody ones that will just hide. They will get out of the coop and they will get out of the fence and they'll go post up somewhere on the property and hatch a bunch of eggs. It happens every year, no matter how much I try to pay attention to them. And then we end up with this, you know, adorable flock of babies. So that's been fun. And chickens you can catch, bison you can't catch. Another fun part of being a farmer is seeing all the food people are making. I don't wholesale to a lot of restaurants. This was an Italian eatery over in Easton in the Silk Mill. I think it's still there. And they were buying stuff from us for a while and making these gorgeous pizzas with burrata just like right in the middle. Curious Goods, they're out by me in Gurmansville, but if you ever have a chance to go there, amazing. And just like a couple places around here. There's a lot of people buying local. I just am really not at a scale where I can do that. But we're scrolling through some pictures now of value-added stuff that we've been making. So these are hot sauces from the farm. That was something new this year. My boyfriend from the potato picture, he grew 500 specialty hot peppers so he could try to understand farming in a different direction. And he made these hot sauces. He made some pepper powders. The other pictures were our garlic scapes, which is the flowering top of a garlic plant. We pickle them and we sell them. Value-added products are just an amazing way for us to kind of carry through the winter. Some of you have experienced the pasta sauce. We do a lot of extra tomatoes and peppers so we can have those things on hand to kind of carry us through the winter. And they're delicious. You know, there's also that, being able to eat tomatoes from the season. These are a couple of pictures from some of our like COVID adventures. We partnered with a food bank right away, and that we were getting bags of vegetables from the farm and from other people, and customers were donating to have us build these bags, and we would take them over to the food drives like every couple of weeks at first because people were out of work and people were worried, and it was just amazing, like watching the patrons like latch on to this so excitedly and knew they were doing something was just totally incredible. These are some pictures of the high tunnel being built. That's some crazy machine you need to like pound giant steel posts into the ground. I stayed very far away from this process because by this point I had already had my hand, but that picture is the tunnel when it was done. And it was just really satisfying. I think, and I said this to the crew, I'm like, even if you had told me I was going to like not be able to move all of my fingers ever again the right way, I think I'd still want to be a farmer. It's just incredible. And these are the crew pictures now we're getting into. If you just want to scroll through every couple of seconds, you totally can, because I know there's like 20 of them. This is just like the whole last 2 years of learning how to harvest, learning how to farm, and seeing how excited they are when they get to do things like this, like pull up beets, harvest herbs. It's just such a different kind of work. It's very quiet. I mean, it also brings out really funny things from people who don't normally farm. And that's been really cool. The boy holding the carrots is like a school teacher. She's an engineer, and they get to do these kind of summer jobs that are just so out of the ordinary from what they normally do. And it can scratch a certain itch in a certain kind of person, which I don't know. I feel like I'm very lucky. I get to do this every day, but it's been really fun. And that's Amanda. She's the one who came up from Texas a few years ago and has worked on a bunch of farms around here. She's just all smiles. It's been really fun to be around a lot of really smiley people as we figure out all these things together. And not every day is smiling. Some days are raining and not everyone's favorite day, but there's more of these than the other way, and that's very cool. So yes, that was this season. This is them stringing tomatoes so they will grow up to the very top of these metal bars you can see in that picture in the tunnel. It's like a jungle in there in the summer. You should definitely come see it. It's right by the parking lot. This was sort of what our stand looked like during COVID. That is actually Allison Zapp, who's the director of Buy Fresh, Buy Local, Greater Lehigh Valley. She's an amazing human. She's done so much for farmers in this area, but it's been a really cool opportunity. She's forged so many of the partnerships that I have with other farmers, that I have with other growers and producers, that I have with other retailers. It's been really cool. And then there's the learning parts of it. So Lisa definitely didn't know how to drive a tractor in 2020. I wasn't even that good at driving a tractor in 2020, but it's been a cool opportunity to learn these things with other people. And, people really want to learn new skills. If you work on a farm, you kind of have to learn how to do everything. You have to learn how to be an electrician. I did that the other day. I had to splice a bunch of wires together and hook up a fan into the solar panel in one of the tunnels. You have to be a plumber, a retailer, sometimes a mom, either to small animals or to other humans. But it's cool. And you meet a lot of people whose brains are kind of always engaged, and they want to keep learning and they want to keep doing, and they don't mind getting a little dirty. And that's pretty important part of it too. And then the pictures you just saw were some of the herbs and things we've been working on. This is a tea. I took this picture last night. This is a new tea blend I made with a lot of herbs we've been drying and harvesting over the course of the summer. They started harvesting herbs in May, harvested them through November, and we get to do these really cool value-added products with them, which again helps us carry through the year. Jessie, the artist who does a lot of the herbals, she even made these little herb prints of all the different herbs she harvested over the course of the seasons. It's really cool to see what people will do with the farm materials available to them. We did a little fundraiser for Afros in Nature this summer where people could come out and pick their own bouquets for a donation to the organization, and that was really well received. We had a whole office come out one day, and there were 12 women who don't normally wander around a field just picking flowers. It was a really cool opportunity. It was really fun to watch. And then part of the really fun part of being a retailer, and I'm sure once the co-op's open, you guys will experience all of this too, is getting ready for holidays was not something I cared about at all until I had a stand, and then people were so excited. I've always been excited about fall is butternut squash season. And then it became, my friend grew this giant pumpkin. Maybe I can have it at the stand and people will take pictures with it. And it just brings so much joy to be excited at different parts of the year. And that for some people, growing these pumpkins is their whole farm livelihood. And it does something different than a vegetable you're going to eat, but it still brings you that same level of joy, which is really cool. So, do I have dates for my plant sale yet? We're going to start like the second or third week in April and then run it for like probably a month and a half. We were still selling plants in June last year. So, oh yeah, it's great.
Oh, Liz, we have about 10 minutes left.
Great.
Do we want to stop for questions now? Do we want to try? There's about 15 slides left. Do you want me to?
It's okay. I mean, if you want to skip down to the Kathy picture, we can. Let's see. It's the second to last one. These are just photos of why the farm is fun. That was one of the dogs sitting on one of the pieces of equipment. This is May from the Wonder Garden. Laura from the kombucha. She's co-op member. Wendy does ferments. Cool women I get to work with. Herbs, strawberries, cool bugs. But yeah, as we're getting to the end here, I joined the co-op in 2015. It's been such a pleasure to watch everything grow. And then, yeah, having Kathy here and being able to be a part of everything in the last couple of months has been such a treat. And I think Carol has some things to say about the rest of this.
Well, can you go back, Matt? Did you catch all the questions that were in the chat? And did anybody else have any other questions? Because we do have a couple minutes. Maybe I'll do the commercials real quick first.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you next? So this is open to everybody. It's been almost a year since we signed the lease for our new store at 250 East Broad Street in Bethlehem. So we're going to have a party and we're going to celebrate. Next. So we're going to start at 11 in the morning, and for a couple hours, we're going to have 2 different hands-on sessions. Folks can come and we're going to show you a simple sew way to make a reusable market bag. We'll also have a no sew with t-shirts. So you can bring old t-shirts. We'll show you a cool way to turn those into tote bags. And then we'll also have a mini seed swap. In tomorrow's newsletter, there'll be a sign up so we can kind of know how many folks are coming. Now, Liz is also doing a shopping opportunity right now. And in the next slide, I'll give you the link to her ordering site. But she's actually going to come to the Ice House on Sunday the 13th, so you can come and pick up your orders. So if you're coming to this event, you can plan around and so that you can get your items while you're there. And then at 1 o'clock, we're going to show a family-friendly movie called Sustainable, and it's the story of some farmers in Central Illinois and many of the same challenges that Liz has had, and how they've partnered with local restaurants and other growers and other producers. So we hope folks will stay to that. So if you're interested in the sale that Liz is having, and I hope this works, that if you want to put your phone up and grab this QR code, this is also on her website for Crooked Row, but she's got a whole plethora of different products that you can get. So produce, the pasta sauce, bread, grains, meats, the teas. Somebody said they were interested in the tea. You can order through there. And so we hope that everybody takes advantage of that as well. Next. So before I turn it back to Liz, just thank you for joining us. If you are interested in learning more about the co-op, it will be a community-owned full-service grocery store that is owned by us, the members, but it will be open to everyone to shop at. And it's going to focus on local producers like Liz so that we can support our local farmers, our local growers, and our local producers and our local economy. So we're projected to open in about a year. It's getting exciting to say that. And we should see some activity at the site fairly soon with the builders. So I'm going to stop talking and turn it back to Liz. Liz, can you see the chat? And if there's any questions in there that you didn't answer or folks
Yeah.
can, I don't know, Matt, if you want to unmute people.